This is Ryan and myself, Josh, with Blipsounds. Everyone's in the Discord, and today we're having one of our Blip stream chats. It's been a super long time, and we're really excited to have Emman, that's Emmanuel Lagumbay from Riot Games, and Emman's audio coordinator over there. So we'll be talking about a lot of stuff, but Emman, do you want to introduce yourself, a bit of your work right off the bat?
Sure, yeah. I'm Emman. I've been in the industry since like 2014 now. Started out as a composer, did a few years of freelancing as that, tried doing sound design at the same time as that. Ended up loving sound design so much that I was like, I kind of want to focus on that for a little bit, and ended up actually getting more work in about a year than it did the 3 years starting as a composer in the industry. As those probably have experienced in the freelance world, it's rough out there. Did a couple of indie projects here and there. Worked on a school project for someone's student game called Super Quiet Turtle Fighter. That was like right off the bat. I got out of my first GDC thing. Worked on most recently outside of Riot Torchlight 3. Doing some additional sound design and some VO work for them, in VO design, and also Puzzles and Dragons when they did the Power Rangers collaboration. I was brought in to do a couple of sound effects for them. At Riot, if you play the game League of Legends, I did a couple of skins. I did some sound design for Dragon Guardian Galio, Astronaut Vagar. I also did sound design for Legends of Runeterra's Rek'Sai champion card release.
Cool, exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Josh, are you going to bring up how we've known each other technically for about longer than I've been in the industry?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy because, we were in like the SoundCloud days, where SoundCloud was really popping. And I would see Emman's like League inspired tracks and stuff. And, that motivated me to get into game audio too. And then actually what's funny is Ryan and you are like the two like starting points for sound design for me, because I went out and met Blipsounds right around the time you did your League redesign for GDC. So it's like all interconnected in this weird way, but that's kind of something cool that we could get into when we talk about like people's journeys through the industry. But yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff Emman's doing. There's also Ventureverse, right? And some Torchlight stuff you did. So I've been seeing Emman's work for a really long time, just online. And funnily enough, we still haven't met up at like an event or anything. And then the pandemic happened, and I feel like that would have been like the year I would have met like a lot of people on here.
Yeah, we were supposed to do, or you were going to come to Seattle PAX with me at least probably that year.
Yeah.
It didn't happen, or PAX didn't happen, so, or GDC didn't happen either. That got shut down too. Yeah.
Yeah, I have no idea where things are at now as far as like those events, but they happen in person one day. We all got to meet up somewhere. But yeah, let's jump right into this. So I think we could kind of like work backwards, like where you're at now, what being an audio coordinator is like, what your day looks like, and then of course all these things that people don't think about, like license management, things that like happen in house that we wouldn't really see being freelance. But yeah, let's just start off with what's being an audio coordinator like. What's your day looking like at Riot?
Sure. So being an audio coordinator has to do a lot with just general administrative work and just general management of like a team. And I don't want to say management because it's like I'm not directly responsible for everybody else's day to day, but I'm responsible for making sure their day to day is successful, if that makes sense. And what I mean by management, I mean like the big thing I'm griping about right now are licenses. We kind of take for granted how many licenses we own as an individual freelancer. Like, one person might have 20 Melda things or a couple of Waves licenses, right?
If you say Waves,
but when
that's
you
the one.
multiply that, yeah, when you got Waves licenses, you got like 3 or 4 big things, right? You've got their sound design suite, their compressor, yada yada. But multiply that by about 40 people, and now you have I think I calculated it was like something like 3,000 individual licenses that are owned by a team, and somebody's got to keep track of that and make sure that moves around accordingly. Um, and it's kind of tough, especially with the way licenses are now, where it's user based and not like account based some of the times. So like when you have stuff all in one account, it's hard to like move it around. And I'm not going to get into the logistics of it. That could be like a whole 3-hour talk and dissertation, I think. But aside from that, I help handle things with like financial stuff. If we're making purchases to get these licenses, I'm the one that interfaces with, IT, purchasing team, legal to make sure that we're cleared to use that because of the end user license agreements that we all definitely read. They make sure that every bit of that makes sense for the company, and if there's something in there, they're making sure that we're aware of that. Like hey, you could get sued for this, and you'll have to take out all the assets in the game that involve that one plugin that you used or whatever. So they bring that up as a concern, and we make sure to work that out with the company if they don't, or if we don't want that to happen. What else do I do? Typically, just gear setup stuff. So like, we buy a lot of gear. Again, like each individual has their own interface, their own keyboard, their own microphone setup, their speaker setup. They might have some EQs. So I got to make sure that everybody's got that kind of set up. I take care of library work for sound files. Like if you're familiar with SoundMiner,
Yeah.
I kind of make sure that we upload our stuff onto SoundMiner so that when we're creating content, it's accessible for everybody there. All that kind of stuff.
That is a lot. And I think that's awesome because, like, I mean, just the other day, talking about Waves plugins, I spent like so much time just trying to, deal with Waves license manager and stuff. And then we were talking about like, you open a project and you're missing a license, the iLock pops up. And that's just like one part of what you do, which is like crazy. And I think what's awesome is that Riot has someone doing this specifically for the audio team as a whole. And I think I was wondering, like, this is something that I think is super useful. It's really helping a lot of people, and your team's still growing. Are there other AAA studios also doing audio coordinator positions? That's one thing I was thinking about.
So I can't really speak on behalf of that because I'm not sure that there are other studios. I can say that I've interviewed at Blizzard for a similar position on the music side, where I was, handling a lot of administrative things and also doing some composition work and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's exactly the same, but again, I don't know, right? Because I can't tell for sure that they would have that or not.
Yeah,
I imagine
the audio coordinator position I hadn't really heard of before. Like it's always pretty simple. It's like audio director, senior sound designer, junior, mid-level, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I guess there's not really like a community of audio coordinators that you can just get in touch with online or something like that.
Honestly, that's super accurate because I've leaned heavily on the former audio coordinators here who have transitioned to full-time sound design, because it's such a unique, weirdly built position that the closest thing I would think of it is some kind of producer level role where that person's meant to unblock and make sure everything's on track for the teams, but not necessarily on the release side of things, but like on the back end side. So it's like I got to make sure my team's unblocked by buying them the licenses they need to get the materials or the plugins they need to create their content.
Honestly,
instead of that.
Yeah, I think that's actually very undervalued. I'm sure Josh can relate, but like as a contractor, like when like I work with 1 or 2 other people day to day, and like we've talked about like getting an audio coordinator sort of role, or like we've called it a producer, but now I know the official name. But we would get like we been talking about getting like an audio producer or something like that for these kinds of things. I was actually wondering, so does the audio coordinator do anything beyond, I mean, the sort of like making sure they're on the right path and making sure they have no interruptions? Do you also handle like anything like meetings or like anything or like maybe, I don't know, like talks with other people or anything like that? I know there was like a Power Up Audio talk a while ago. I don't know if you're involved in like helping coordinate anything like that or whatnot.
Yeah, so actually that working with Kevin on that was actually direct involvement with me, but that actually spawned from I think him reaching out to me to be on the show first. So I had done that, and I'm like, hey, what about the rest of Riot? We've got plenty of people that would love to jump in on this. So I was involved with connecting him with those individuals, making sure it was cleared by our comms and PR team, so that we could do it and not have to worry about like, Riot's PR team doesn't want us to say all these things. We were very openly opened to go ahead and do it and say whatever in terms of the craft.
It's also a very niche role, I feel like, because you have to know audio as well.
Yeah.
Like one of the things that like we've had a handful of people do like edit videos for Blipsounds like on the YouTube channel and Twitter and such, but the hardest part has been finding someone that can edit videos and also understand sound design for video games. Like it's like a very fine margin of things that they have to be able to do, and it sounds like you're kind of in the same boat.
Yeah, it's definitely my role specifically here at Riot is supposed to transition to sound design. So like they're looking for people that can not only handle the administrative side of things and be able to like, manage operations, but also that will become a sound designer and full-time create content for the game that they're, going to be working on. So specifically at Riot, I can say that that's one of the high. We're not necessarily looking for somebody that's going to full-time sound design, but somebody that's going to manage operations and still knows audio. I do think that it is teachable to, at least have the gauge of that. But the concern is to have somebody with the interest to stay at that level for a long period of time if they're not audio people, right? If they're not passionate about audio, they might want to move on from that. Then we'd have to recycle the whole entire system and start from scratch again.
That's true. And that's actually a really good point, because if audio coordinators were switching every single time, that'd be really tough for like the whole team. And I think it's like what Ryan says, it's very niche and you need someone who understands audio to do this. And I guess on that angle, when you were applying at Riot, did you apply for like the coordinator role and think like, oh, this is my way into sound design? Or were you thinking like, oh, I'd really like to do this position, it just happens to, track into sound design?
That's a really, really good point. I think it does fall into the latter for me, mostly because I had been continually handling a lot of administrative work beforehand. I worked with a label that did video game cover music, kind of focusing on the day-to-day of that. I was working a day job at a company as a customer success specialist. Basically just making sure that people are happy with the product that they're using. That was like in tech construction, right? So it was that kind of stuff still resonated with me. It was really cool that this is a position that does go into creative, because obviously I'd be super into that. Would I be content staying in this kind of position if it was my focus and it was the only thing I did? Then yeah, totally. But right now it's kind of a split path where I'm doing both sound design, creative work, and administrative work. So it's like, it'll be nice to get to focus in and hone in on one. So I hope, does that answer that question correctly? Not correctly, but like.
Oh yeah. I think it's awesome though, because I think for a lot of people listening, it's important to know that administrative work can still be fulfilling work. It might not be super flashy like making sounds for all the league champions or something, but this is something that's really vital to a team, and it's also something that you can get a lot of fulfillment out of, because you're helping so many people out. And I know I could use an audio coordinator. I'm sure a lot of people could, and a lot of teams.
No, for sure. I'm in the same boat. Like E-Man, do you want to like be an audio coordinator for Josh and I? Just like, you know.
I don't think I can contractually do that.
Yeah. Oh man.
But I mean, I'm sure there are people out there that would be interested in taking that on for sure.
Actually, I was gonna say, because I've had a couple people from the Blipsounds Discord message me asking me if they had been in touch with game studios that had said, "Hey, we don't have a sound design role open, or we don't need that much sound design, but if you're interested, we would love to put you in an administrative role with some sound design and music attached to it." And it didn't really have a title, but I think, and like they were confused because they were like, "I don't want this. Like this isn't what I signed up for." But I feel like if they had called it and like pitched it as this is an audio coordinator role, they probably would have been like, "Oh, okay, I can get on board with this," or something like that.
Yeah, that seems to be a thing. Like, it's not a common moniker across the industry. Like, I would say even audio coordinator. Obviously, I don't know many, right? I don't know that there are many out there. But I think each studio kind of calls it something different. Like, I'll tell you that I have a friend that's a senior audio coordinator for Tencent. His role is completely different than mine. Whereas like his is kind of like a supervisionary, like he kind of acts as like the audio director for Tencent in the States, or in LA at least. And it's like, he's the one that's hiring composers and sound designers for projects and signing the contract work for, larger studios to do stuff and working with individual contractors and freelancers. I don't do that, right? Like I send a contractor an NDA and other people take it from there, that kind of thing. That's kind of the trade-off on that. So I think the name of it could vary. I think the most consistent way I would view it is like some kind of audio producer role.
Yeah.
But that is a different thing. Like, oh yeah, I produce audio. Like, oh yeah, so you make music.
There's such a gray area, I find, between like such a fine line to cross between like just like senior sound designer or audio director or all of these things, really. Like, I feel like it's a title at the end of the day, and like every studio is going to handle those titles very differently.
Mm-hmm.
On that note, like talking about how there's no consistency for what an audio coordinator is, and even how the term is like applied. I saw your talk with IGDA on that panel, and you talked a bit about like paradigm shifts in the industry. And I'm wondering, could we see this role pop up more in AAA studios, and then even in smaller studios? I'm just, from what you've told me about it, I feel like this is something that studios could look at to like really be saving time for sound designers and composers.
I think it's hard. It's hard for me to say because things feel a little bit different here at Riot, and what I mean by that is, even larger studios, you might see 2 or 3 sound designers on a team. One of our teams has like 10. So, we have one game that has, let's say, 10 sound designers on it, another game that has 4 or 5. That's the reason I think this is very helpful, because the scale in which it applies is very useful. Could that happen at other studios? Like, could I see Sony doing it? Sure, right? They've got a big studio that has a lot of teams and a lot of sound designers, but it's kind of hard to centralize something like that when you've got so many different campuses, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Whereas here we've got one big campus where, mostly in LA, we have a few other studios here and there that are, also including audio folks. But it's harder to do I would say it's harder to what's the word I'm looking for? Apply a coordinator role to every single studio if it's not as if it doesn't work for them, because they're not centralized. Therefore, that team's going to operate completely different than the team across the street or the team 3 states over or whatever, even if it's under the same umbrella.
Okay.
So here, thankfully, we do have everything under one umbrella. Therefore, it's easier to centralize it. and we can kind of make that call. But that call got made a little bit earlier, so it might be more difficult for larger studios that don't necessarily operate the same way to do something similar. Could it happen? Sure. I don't think it wouldn't. I would say that it is helpful. It's a definitely justifiable cost. I'm not saying that for job security or anything, but I'm also saying that because, there's definitely a lot of stuff that goes on in the coordinator world that you don't want to put on a creative, because the creative should be creating content, not buying licenses or working with legal to sign a contract or whatever.
Yeah, I really love the way that you put it earlier. Like, you're removing as many roadblocks for the creative so that they can fly. I think that's really cool.
Yeah, that's definitely the goal of this role, and I would love to see more of that in the industry. Does it happen already? Probably. Again, we don't really know about it because they don't pop up that often.
Yeah,
I'd love to see more of that in this room, because literally I sat down to do some sounds the other day, and it's like I spent a whole hour just troubleshooting like technical stuff. So I definitely see how useful that could be at a large scale.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Now, I guess one thing Oh yeah, Ryan?
Sorry. No, I just said technical stuff sucks, but go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, we can all agree with that. Yeah, I mean, one thing Ryan and I talk about is like in-house and freelance. Blipsounds, we're like a team, and we do a lot of contracting. And then you mentioned like there's some audio coordinators who handle that kind of stuff, like reaching out to contractors, things like that. And I guess it could be a cool time to talk about things like, how many studios are starting to hire out. Does location matter? Because we're all in 3 different places. I'm in Florida, Ryan's in Austin, and you're in Cali, Emman. And even then, like, you used to be in Colorado, I'm moving to Pennsylvania. Ryan used to be here in Florida too. So it's like, I wonder how much did your location play into you ending up with Riot? Like, did you relocate, or like, were you in the right place at the right time to get that position? And then Ryan, you could talk about some stuff like contracting.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and because you mentioned you worked on Torchlight, and you worked on, or you had applied to Blizzard. My initial instinct and guess was that you were probably in California already. Is that correct?
Yeah, born and raised California.
Wow, good for you. You were right place for sure.
Yeah, it helped. It definitely helped. That said, to kind of answer your question, Josh, I don't think I needed to be in California. I just needed to go to the right things at the right time. And what I mean by that is, like, when GDC kicked off, I went in 2014. Riot happened to have a booth then. And I met, the sound designers from back then, the former audio director, the sound designer that became the audio director, that kind of thing. And we kept in touch since then. But that was me going to a San Francisco event. I had never been, seen them at an LA thing at all. The same could be said for like going to an event like Game SoundCon, right? Where it is in LA, yes. It is cheaper to go there once a year than it is to live there, I would say. So if you end up at that event and you make those connections and build those relationships, over a time, then you can kind of take from that. When the way I viewed networking has always been like, working a farm or a garden, where you're planting the seeds in your relationships, you're talking with everybody, and then tending to them over time by just keeping in touch, just checking how people are doing at a human level, not at a work level. And then eventually that relationship will grow enough where they're like, oh, hey, yeah, we've got some jobs. Do you want them? And that doesn't necessarily mean you have to be at that location all the time. You just have to be actively, reaching out and being a part of that person's life in general.
Yeah.
And I would say that definitely helped me a lot.
Yeah, I think that I summarize a big part of that to trust, right? It's like they probably got a good vibe from you, and you met them in person, and they got to see what you were all about. And then as you stayed in touch with them, and like you showed that you were just like a real person that wanted to that you never really. I'm guessing you didn't really ask for anything, and like that probably worked out in your favor.
Yeah, you didn't like just whip out your business card.
Oh man,
Fair. When I first started, I totally did. That was definitely me. I was like, "Hey, yo, I want jobs. Like, here are my business cards. Just making it rain my business card." That was definitely me, and I had learned very quickly that is not the way to approach it. You know? Yeah, exactly. That's just so rough.
There are some stories of people that go to audio meetups, and I've heard this for multiple audio meetups in multiple cities. There's always one person that will just show up and drop their business cards on tables and leave, and it's like, ooh, like all these other people are putting in the work to like make friends, and like it's not even putting in the work. It's just that people actually want to be there and make friends. And stuff, and you just want to try to get work by putting a business card down, and that kind of sucks.
It's rough when you do that. Again, like it's something I learned quick. Like I wasn't that adamant about it, but like Josh, if I were to meet you back then, I would be like, "Hey, Josh, hi, I'm a composer. I do work like this. I yada yada. Here's my business card. All right, see ya." Like that would have been me back in 2014, 2013. And looking back at that, I'm like, oh my god, that's like the most cringe-worthy thing that I've definitely reflected on. And I'm glad I'm no longer that way, right? I feel like I'm definitely a lot more the opposite, where it's like I will talk to a person first, and I'm the one that's asking for their business card at that point because of the the desire to want to continue to build that relationship. If I'm in a great conversation with somebody, I'll be like, hey, like, is there a way I can keep in touch? And like that's when I'll do the business card exchange.
Yeah.
You see, I got lucky. Oh yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
Well, when you and I went to PAX, I got lucky because I forgot my business cards, and that was my first event out. So I had no choice. I had to talk to people. But I mean, it's funny because getting out to the events is so important. Even the way Ryan and I met. I was just on like YouTube or something, and I saw a Blipsounds video, and I was like, wait, they're in Orlando. I'm in Tampa, and then I went to Ryan's like audio class. And we just linked up from there.
I remember you joined the server, and then I posted the class, and you were like, "Oh, you're in Florida."
Yeah.
When I posted the class, and then you came out, and I was like, "Hey, it's the dude from Discord." When he showed up.
These local events too, like I guess that's something to get to, that these smaller local events can mean a lot because you might be meeting people in your little bubble. And like, now Ryan, you're out in Austin, and we're talking about meeting up in Austin. It's like an expanding network. And I remember this server was a lot smaller back then, and now there's so many people.
You were probably like in the first like 100 people to join the server. Like there were not a lot of people at that point. It was a pretty new thing. I think it hadn't even existed for like 6 months or something like that.
I mean, it's crazy how time flies, but I guess that's like my takeaway, that like, it's like, building those connections of people. And it's great that Emman, when you went out, you connected with like people at Riot. And I mean, something that's awesome to think about is like, you had like this anime arc, you were doing League inspired tracks and stuff, and now you're at Riot. And that's just from, genuinely getting out there and connecting with people. So I think it's a very positive message for people to know, like, hey, the audio community maybe isn't like as huge as people think, and they can meet people that work on games that they play. And, when they're online and looking at events and stuff, they might run into people that, you'd really want to talk to and get to know.
I kind of want to piggyback off that because you mentioned anime arc, and like for those that don't know, I've applied to Riot for about a decade straight. Like Josh knows, man. Like he's seen that like arc happen from the very beginning. It took me about 10 years of applying to Riot to finally get that position and to be ready to take on that position. And what I want to bring up there is like, have that resilience if you really want to go for something. And keep working toward it. And the thing that I would also add is I have basically met every single person that got the job I applied to beforehand, right? Like they were all people that either continued to work at Riot or, were soon after, left soon before I got there or whatever it was. Every single position that has been filled at Riot, whether it was a composer, sound design, or coordinator position, I have met those people. And I know exactly why I didn't get the job. Because I see and hear their work and I'm like, holy crap. Yeah, no wonder they got the position, that kind of thing. So it's like understanding where you are in your current timeline of things and how to improve upon that. Don't get discouraged when you realize like, yeah, okay, maybe I'm not ready for it yet, because you never know who's actually applying. And like I said, I've met all the people that have gotten the jobs I've applied for, and yeah, I've love all their work. So it's definitely just like not something to beat yourself up on.
I love how positive you are about that, because we see people's work online, or even in this case, you're applying to jobs, meeting people who end up getting the job you're applying to. It's easy for a lot of us to, get jealous or like, feel bitter. And I think it's great that you're turning that into learning from someone else's work and enjoying their work too, like being excited about their achievements and what they went on to do. And, things are always moving in the industry, whether you're freelance or in-house, and there's no telling those people you meet, stuff moves around, they might remember you. And if you're someone who's been genuinely just connecting with their work, it's like a big, I mean, even you being in this call, like, I don't even remember when I first like bumped into your work, but it had to be like, I saw a track on SoundCloud one day and like the rest is history. And I think that's awesome.
I feel like it was Reddit.
Yeah, maybe.
I have a feeling, because I'm pretty sure I came across your stuff on Reddit at one point, on the League subreddit, or vice versa. I don't remember which one it was. And then we kind of commented on each other's stuff from then on and stayed connected through that.
Yeah, I mean, the internet, it's just like you pick up on someone's work and you have no idea where that stuff could go. So, just being positive, staying in touch, it's just really cool. And it reminds me of like Stardew Valley. I've been playing that. I just got a Switch recently, but it's like, go around town, talk to people, get to know them, what their life's like, stuff like that. And you're planting little seeds, and you never know what they could turn into. But yeah, I just think that's cool, and positivity is super important. I've even been seeing more positive like articles and stuff on networking from audio people, which I think is really cool. Like, because when I don't know, when older people started out, they might not have had people to tell them like stuff like this, I guess. So I just think that's really cool.
We have a question from Austin, actually. He says, Emman, now that you're at a studio, how much does developing relationships continue? How does it apply to you now?
That's a very, very solid question. And I'm glad, Austin, you brought that up. Mostly because, like, as audio coordinator, my position interfaces with a lot of different teams outside of the audio discipline. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm working hand in hand with IT a lot, hand in hand with legal a lot, with the finance team a lot, with the facilities team a lot, with our security teams a lot, that kind of thing. And this role essentially becomes an ambassador for the audio team. And what I mean by that is anything I say or do represents the audio team as a whole at Riot Games. So my goal is to continue to build that relationship in a positive manner, because I'm representing all 40-something people on the audio team with any kind of relationship I'm building. And it never really stops, because even if you're in a studio, there's so many gears that are turning, right? You're working with artists, you're working with writers, you're working with publishers, you're working with copywriters, people that post stuff, the brand managers, producers. You've got a ton of people that, you're interfacing with, not to mention the army of, programmers that are trying to help support your team and create the hooks that you need to get into your, your audio into the game and whatnot. So you constantly have to build your relationships with people because of how much, in the long run, it's a very helpful thing in general. you want to make sure that you're still representing your discipline positively, but also that you're showing face so that people know your discipline exists. And I had a chat about this with somebody the other day, giving advice for when I do transition to full-time sound design, approaching it, where being a part of a team or a pod that has an artist, a person that handles the engineering for it, then somebody that's writing narrative, basically say, oh, if we make this change, we need to let audio know, is already a huge deal, right?
Yeah.
Because you're in there showing your face saying like, oh yeah, that's the thing that I that impacts me. Whereas if I don't build that relationship and don't build that rapport with that team, then they're like, oh, audio isn't really in this team, so let's just keep going with it. And then audio down the line, it's like, oh, that change you made weeks ago, that actually impacted me. But if they're already thinking about you because they know you exist on a team, that's a big deal, right? So that's where the relationship building kind of has a big up, I think.
That's hilarious because Ryan, you sent me that meme. Like, remember, like art animations changing, like a ton of them, and then suddenly audio's like not informed on that.
Yeah, it was the Star Wars, it was the Clone Wars, like
the Anakin,
Padme,
yeah.
And Anakin is just like, hey, we made some changes to the animations. You let the audio team know, right?
Mm-hmm.
You let the audio team know, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's
so
just like that happens to so many people. It's wild. But yeah, maybe we could jump into some of these other questions. Like I guess one thing that's cool is some of these studios do intern positions. So we have a question from Talon that says, what tips do you have for applying for an audio internship at Riot or similar studios? Or what kind of projects are these people looking for in the portfolios?
Cool. So I don't know if I would say they're looking for particular projects. I wasn't part of the hiring team on that intern that we recently hired, so I don't know for sure. I can tell you from experience that your craft skills are going to be, looked at very closely. And what I mean by that is like, you could work on Pac-Man 1 to 5 or something like that, where it's a very simple game. You're roaming around collecting dots, but it has to sound really good. That's the main thing they're looking for. Like we wouldn't necessarily, care on what the particular titles, the individual titles you're working on, as long as the content you're showing is high quality audio. And what I mean by high quality audio is it's like taking into account the player's perspective. Are you able to give the gameplay cues clearly? Can you clearly tell when a spell is being cast, when it's landing, when hitting an opponent, when it's not hitting opponent? Just being aware of that when you're sound designing stuff will help your portfolio and general game audio design, honestly. And other tips I would say is just, it does, I can't say it necessarily helps to cater your portfolio to Riot. I'm a complete hypocrite when I say that because I've done so many redesigns of, the stuff from League of Legends. But do be aware that when you do that, the team knows what to look for and knows where you're at fault of, like where your weaknesses are or where your strengths.
Those cinematics are so cool. I don't blame you for redesigning them.
I think that Austin has a similar story as well. Actually, I think he had applied to Riot a bunch of times as well, and like that was the one thing that he wanted. And look at where you both are now, Yeah,
I'm gonna mad shout out Austin. Like every conversation I've had with him has been super, just like inspiring with the way he approaches content creation, and he's been like a phenomenal addition to the team.
Yeah,
and he was my first onboard out of state onboard E. So I got to figure out how to, send stuff over to him in Indiana, get gear, make sure he's got it all, and working on that. But he handled it like a champ. So it's been very, very much a pleasure to having him on the team.
Yeah, it's so awesome to see that, like, people that I only met Austin like at PAX and just a while later at Riot.
Oh yeah, you guys met. Wow, I forgot about that.
Yeah, it was
That's
awesome to
crazy.
see,
Yeah,
and I just think it's
I met
cool.
Austin too.
Oh,
Yeah,
that was your
I
first time
agree.
too?
I'd never met Austin before that. I just yeah, Austin's the
You're
man, man.
crushing it.
Um,
But yeah, I
that is
think
not
it's.
true, Austin.
Oh wait, what happened? Let's see. Ryan is tall. I'm
Ryan,
not even gonna cap on that. But
Yeah, wait, Talon, are you the one that did like was it the Project Yumi skin or something like that? I don't remember. Nice. Yeah, we were definitely talking about that. We were like, oh, hey, this is pretty cool. Yeah, the team brought it up for sure, man. And like Soundburger, yeah, he's audio lead for R&D now. But yeah, it was pretty fun hearing hearing your take on it.
nice. That's awesome.
now, I love how positive that is. And yeah, I guess if I could add anything, I think it's um, people are looking at how detail oriented you could be, because that's like a lot of sound design, and a lot of these Riot games too are like so much about getting key information to players. So um, that's worth noting. But connected to that, one of the other questions from MF Kitten was, is there something you miss in older sound design for games? And is there something you're tired of hearing in modern sound design? Also, what's like the latest thing in sound design that's got you like excited, like that really surprised you?
Okay, so let's start with what I'm gonna take this from a tools perspective. I'm gonna start with the last question of like what's exciting me in sound design. Um, we updated our SoundMiner database to the latest version, which came with something called Radium. Um, and this, if you haven't heard of Radium, is a tool that you can basically take sounds from your SoundMiner library, throw it in similar to how you would like Contact, and then play with it and mess with it. But it also comes with built-in plugin chain stuff, and you can also apply your your personal plugins to it to do different chain things. Um, but it's easily performable and recordable, and you could easily match a bunch of different sounds that you do. Like if you're familiar with the tool Whoosh or S Layer, where you can throw a bunch of
I just
sounds
bought
in.
that thing.
Yeah, like you throw a bunch of sounds in, right, in Contact, and then basically it acts like a sampler. Radium does that, but kind of amplifies that, I think, to another level. And what makes it even cooler for me is if you have like 5 or 6 different sound channels that you're individually tweaking to make certain effects, you could perform them differently and record that performance, and it'll spit out. It can spit out the individual stem for that track. So if you don't like how it sounds altogether, you can mix or match those individual things that are like, you do like or don't like, and you can tweak them individually when you sum them down together at some point.
I should have talked to you about this, because I just bought S Layer and Radium sounds better right now.
Slayer is still great. I think Radium. I don't know that they have an individual plugin now. I believe Justin is working on some kind of individual plugin for it, but it's batched together with SoundMiner. So if you pick up SoundMiner, which honestly is great for organizing your sound library anyway, it keeps things easy to audition throughout everything. So you don't have to like listen to your file explorer, or if you're in Reaper, you can audition it there. But like SoundMiner lets you search for it a little bit easier, I think, and have databases for everything. So if you buy SoundMiner, the new version comes with Radium. It's such a fun tool. It's a cool creation thing, and you could do like weird LFO things with it that continue to spiral into everything, if that makes
Yeah, I
sense.
love that stuff.
Remind me the other part of the question.
So like, what is something you miss in sound design for older games or older sound design, and maybe something you're tired of hearing in modern sound design?
That's a tough question, because I don't know that I really got into sound design heavily to analyze that stuff back then. Again, like I think it was a recent transition for me. I will say that a lot of sound design now tends to be very heavy on the mix for a lot of things, where there's just so much going on.
Yeah.
Clarity is kind of difficult to get through, and when you do find those elements of clarity, it's super, super cool. I think I would like to go back to some form of simplicity in some sound design, where it's like, this is a hit. This is what that hit's going to sound like, without having to worry about all the bells and whistles, sometimes literally, of what happens. Do I think that's going to happen? Probably not, because we're trying to evolve our sound design. We're trying to make it better and better. And we're trying to make what right now might be a little bit muddy more clear, right? So we're progressing to a point where I think I am excited to see us reach that point of simplicity with the level of high quality audio we have nowadays. Do I miss things being a little bit more simple? Sure. Yeah. I mean, everybody I think misses that, especially after, a year like 2020.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I always say that I like to say there's like a meta with a lot of like creative mediums across game development and film and anything really. Like it's kind of interesting to look over just like the last like 10 years and how like music has progressed.
Right.
And like just you can, if you listen to songs from or like the most popular songs, like the 10 most popular songs of the year for the last 10 years, you will hear a progression in that. And I think the same goes for sound design, honestly. I worked on a project back in January. Not really allowed to talk about it, but it's a successor to another game that existed back in like 2010 or 12. And the sounds in the 2012 game kind of sucked. Like it was kind of like, but that's just because today's standards are so much higher than it was 8 years ago or 9 years ago. And yeah, it's weird to like you said, I think that like us experiencing that year by year, day by day, like you might go back and think like, oh yeah, Sonic Adventure, that game was so good, but then like you go back and play it and it's
yeah, I love that game. I don't want to go back.
Yeah. No, I'm not trying to knock on it, but there are definitely games and there's music like that, and it's just like what holds up and what doesn't. And I think in particular, like as of the last couple years, sound design has definitely like seen an increase in its quality across games as a whole. And you also mentioned something earlier, like the very beginning, I didn't get to touch on. You had said that you started as a music composer and you decided to start doing sound design, and like you were able to find a job way quicker. And I think Josh and I can both relate to that most studios are needing more like sound designer. Sound design is still underserved in the industry, I would say, in terms of just like pure popular I mean just by popularity of like the craft and like how many people are applying and such. And I would be willing to guess that like if more people were, or I guess more studios, or so there's still studios out there that don't take sound design seriously, but if there are a lot more sound designers that were making better sounds altogether, then I think that we would continue to see like big jumps in sound design quality across games as a whole as well.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's great. Like a conversation on like the simplicity aspect and how modern stuff is very mix heavy. Because I mean, I'm a little bit younger than like Ryan, and I grew up right at the peak time of like RuneScape and then Minecraft, and then right around college was like Fortnite and stuff. But I mean, RuneScape, Minecraft, really simple sound design games, but people love the sound in those games to an extent. And I played like old World of Warcraft when Burning Crusade was popping, and I always loved like the wide open ambiences with not much going on, like not super music heavy, but not a lot of sounds either. Not even many like movement sounds or anything. But I nowadays it's like we're side chaining like all these different elements and setting up all these like buses to route audio specific ways. It's a bit more complicated now, for sure.
Lots of processing.
Yeah.
But hey, it works, right? Like whatever works, honestly, in the end, that involves the art form is cool with me.
Yeah, I'm about to say, but people keep making cool plugins and stuff too. It's like I've only recently got into sound design like tools. I was mainly just using like, you know, stuff you would use in music, like, you know, reverbs and all that. But now there's purpose made sound design tools like S-Layer and stuff that are just great. Like so much creative stuff you can do with those. I want to make sure I get some of these other questions. So Nick says, this is kind of attached to that, I guess. Where do you see gaming in the near future? What about in 10 years from now?
Man, that's fun. I'm excited for where VR goes.
Exactly,
things,
yeah.
mostly because that is a very, very big Wild West right now, at least in my opinion. Obviously, we've seen a huge paradigm shift already in mobile gaming, where, you know, it was like, oh, mobile gaming, that's dumb. Like, no one's going to play games on their phone. To like, yeah, no, that basically is an entire market of an entire country somewhere, you know, that kind of thing.
And also is like, it's basically replaced what Game Boy and the Nintendo DS were at one point. Yeah.
Yeah. Like the amount of quality content that can come from mobile games is starting to be pretty cool. I'm excited to see where that continues to go because of that replacement.
Yeah, because I feel like I think that everyone can see something like what are the games? The one by King, Candy Crush or Clash of Clans or whatever. And it's
the Supercell stuff.
The Supercell stuff, yeah. And then, but then there's games like Monument Valley, which are like absolutely beautiful and amazing. And it's like, but you're right, there is like definitely like an incline of like more of those games coming along on mobile.
Yeah, let's stop for a second and talk about Genshin Impact.
So I haven't played it, but I see all the ads.
Okay. Genshin Impact is like, it's Breath of the Wild anime on your phone.
Oh,
like,
I didn't know that was on your phone.
You could play it on your phone. You could play this. It's like a 1-to-1 of, you know, a mobile version of the PC version and the console version on your phone. And yeah, you know, I'm gonna plug Riot stuff. They've got Wild Rift, which is League on crack for your phone.
My brother's been playing that. I haven't tried it yet.
It's been super fun. Like I've enjoyed playing it on like downtime when it's like, hey, I just need something quick to play. It's like a 10-15 minute version of League of Legends, which is like normally 40 minutes, right? And then, you know, we've actually had articles recently talking about how like we're thinking about games with mobile content in them and making sure that we have like, hey, this needs to be able to work on mobile too, because of the focus and the shift on that.
That's interesting. I'm like pretty out of touch with the mobile games market, I would say. I definitely like, I mean, I work on them, but I don't like, it's definitely a space I'm less familiar with overall.
You hit on the big ones, though.
Sound is, yeah. I guess sound is a little bit,
it's tricky.
It's like not as, yeah, it's also like not as sought after for games, I find. Well, or on mobile games at least, like the mix doesn't really matter as much. I'm not doing as much integration. I mean, the reward sounds and all that are absolutely,
yeah, those are amazing. Like some of these games. Yeah, I've been seeing more competitive mobile games where they try to like really get people on the phone playing these games at a high skill level, and then also like and then we see like hyper casual games, like, you know, Flappy Bird being like the first one to really break, and then like, you know, Temple Run, all these games. So it's like, yeah, mobile games are like a whole nother world almost. But I think it's great that like Riot brought League to mobile, because I think a lot of what people hesitate to get into games like League, or like any sort of game with like a high skill cap is like they feel like they can't access it as easily and get into the action and stuff. So I think it was super smart to get Wild Rift because my brothers literally asked me to play Wild Rift all the time. uh, but yeah, I think it's awesome, and I think VR and mobile games are like there's no telling what can happen, and the utility of VR goes beyond games too, like installations and stuff. Like that's kind of stuff I've been thinking of.
Yeah, it's interesting you said mobile as one of your answers, E-Man. That's actually fascinating. I hadn't considered. Yeah.
I'm just so curious because if things like Genshin Impact, appear on mobile, like what's next, right? If we can play basically a Breath of the Wild kind of game on mobile and it not be a god awful experience by any means, like
also,
what are we gonna do?
There's also like a gap of like the level of quality that people really care about in a game and like what mobile is able to provide in terms of or like what mobile devices are able to provide in terms of technology and like whether they can handle like their CPU and whatnot can handle like running those games and whatnot. I'm kind of curious to see where that threshold is at a certain point.
I kind of have a counter argument to that. It's like people spend $2,000 on a computer.
Yeah.
Right? They buy once every 5-10 years, maybe. A person's going to buy a phone every X amount of years, like 3 or 4 years, most likely.
Yeah.
And it's going to be probably the next version up from there. So they're constantly improving their tech.
That's true.
With phones, and they're probably accessing that a lot more. At least that's just my brain thinking about it. I don't know the exact studies or anything, but like if I'm constantly having to upgrade my phone, like I'm going to have the tech to run the latest.
Yeah. Right. That's what I agree with you. Like I think that we'll be hitting that point.
Yeah.
At a certain sooner than we think. Rather.
Right.
Like,
right.
The technology is advancing, and we will have better and better games. Yeah, but I guess I'm just wondering, like, at what point will the improvements? Yeah, I guess we're just hitting that point where the improvements will be enough and technology to where everyone can make awesome games. I guess it kind of just depends on what the audience becomes, because right now I would say that mobile is definitely it's definitely a different type of person from one that plays computer games or something like that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Like a lot more casual. That's interesting. I'm gonna think on that. I like that.
Yeah, this stuff is like, I mean, it's like a super deep, interesting topic. I feel like we could talk about it for like forever. We do have one more question from Austin again. He said,
sure.
How has your company dealt with burnout in your experience?
So this is, again, I'm glad he brought this up. As somebody that has a lot of stuff on his plate, constantly, I felt like it's up to management to kind of handle that. And my manager is one of the best managers I've ever had anywhere, where I've literally said, hey, can I take time off? He's like, yeah, go for it. And that's no questions asked. It's just, yeah, do it.
Yeah.
Riot itself as a company has done this in multiple ways, especially in this last year. We have a very, very, very generous paid time off policy where, like I just said, if you need to take time off, just put it in your schedule. You're an adult expected to finish your work, but you're also an adult that's, got your issues or needs or whatever that's going to have to happen, and you can take time to handle those things. For me, not for me, but for Riot, we have a full week off, actually in a couple weeks. The entire company is taking a full week off. Just to say, like, take a summer break, enjoy yourselves the first week of August. We've set aside that schedule. We're still working out the tweaks, obviously, because when you have that deadline, now you have to make sure everything makes that deadline and everything. But it does give us a chance to recharge. Riot during the holidays gives everyone 2 weeks paid time off before Christmas and New Year and whatnot. I feel that we're very, open about that. And like, I legit feel like if I need to take time off whenever, I'm empowered to. And that comes from the top all the way down. Like, it's not just my manager saying that. it's the CEO, the head of HR, the director of the audio team, to the manager of the particular team that audio person's working on. Like, I feel very, very lucky to be able to do that. And I know that's not the case everywhere. I think we're getting better as an industry towards that. I hope that we continue to, have that kind of trajectory where we're making sure that we're not burning out our coworkers and our teammates, because it is very much a thing that is a concern. And I hope that we continue to have that in Riot. I don't anticipate that changing, but obviously, I don't know the future. But I do believe that our company puts us first when it comes to that kind of stuff, and they definitely listen. And I'm very, very lucky and privileged to be able to just say, hey, I need to take time off to do something.
I mean, that sounds like, it sounds like you guys just know each other, or the team knows each other and they trust each other to you guys are all stars that will figure things out in that time off, and get back to it and come back even better, whatever.
That's part of the hiring process, right? Like, Riot's not going to hire somebody that's going to abuse that kind of trust.
Right. Yeah, totally.
So.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking too. Is it's all the steps of why you're there in the first place that you earned that privilege to, I guess, leave at any point and whatnot.
Right.
Take a break. Yeah, totally.
That's a big deal.
Should we wrap this up, Josh?
Yeah, it's like storming so bad outside. My lights flickered.
I can't hear it at all.
Yeah, we can't hear a thing.
Yeah,
I need to get out of here. Get out of Florida.
Yeah, you're close, man. Just a little bit more time.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for coming and doing this, Emman. It's awesome to have people in the server talking about their work and the industry again, and especially do it with someone like you who I've been following for so long. It's really cool to link up in this way. And yeah, maybe we could play some games sometime. You could show us Wild Rift, and I haven't checked out Genshin, but that'd be really cool to try out. But also, thank you everyone tuning in. We'll try to get this on YouTube as soon as we can, but I love seeing the community like this of different perspectives and having someone as positive as Emman on here.
Emman, is there anything you wanted to plug or mention as or your Twitter or anything that Riot's doing or anything you're working on that's cool?
Nothing too much in particular. Obviously, we're constantly hiring, so keep an eye out on our careers page for audio jobs. Right now, a lot of them are senior level things. If you're interested in learning more, hit me up whenever. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter. I'm on Facebook. I haven't been adding. I have a list of people I need to add. I'm so bad at that now. But if you have questions, just reach out at any point. Thanks again for having me, Josh. It's great to finally talk and chat after all these years. Ryan, what you guys have built here is great. I love that you've been a community for people to grow in and learn from, and that's definitely needed in this industry. And I hope you all continue with that and continue with the growth and learning of the craft.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, you guys have been really great about being open to participating and stuff like this. So we super appreciate that. Your guys, I was gonna say as well in regards to social media. I feel like Riot, at least the audio team, has probably the best Twitter presence of I can't think of a better another audio team from a bigger game company that has a better and healthier Twitter presence than you guys do. So props to that.
That means a lot. Thank you. I'll pass that along to the team for sure.
For sure. Cool. Well, yeah, thanks, Emman, for joining. Everybody, go follow Emman on Twitter.
Yeah, I'll plug your stuff in our announcement.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
If you haven't already, then what are you doing? But awesome, y'all. Thanks so much for joining.